Really glad to have back former independent counsel, former judge, all-around really smart dude. It's Kenneth Starr. Ken, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thank you.
It's always an absolute pleasure to have you on. The name of the book is Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Make sure you go and read that book because you're going to get some insight into that Clinton investigation from the 90s that you probably hadn't heard before because the media doesn't want to report it, but you get it straight from the guy. Ken, I want to start out with this, and I mentioned this right beforehand. You were the independent counsel. Robert Mueller was a special counsel, right? Or appointed counsel. What's the difference between who you were and what your job was and what Mueller just did?
Yeah, the job is similar, but the name is different and the structure is different. Okay. I was appointed, Joe, by a three-judge panel of the judges in the District of Columbia, and I was appointed under a statute that Congress passed as part of the Great Watergate reform efforts in 1978.
Right.
And that statute was on the books, Joe, is renewed, but it was on the books for 21 years. The statute went away, and with that, we essentially returned to the traditional method of handling sensitive investigations involving potentially the president himself. And that was the Attorney General of the United States or the President of the United States appoints a special counsel. So Bob Mueller was appointed by the Attorney General of the United States.
Well, he was appointed by Rosenstein, right? Because I think that was after Jeff Sessions recused himself. So you're right. He was the acting attorney general. Let's start from the start. James Comey, obviously not a fan of the president. We found that out very clearly. Has said now in testimony in front of the House of Representatives or the Senate, I forget which one, I released a memo of my meeting with the president to the New York Times through a friend in the hopes of seating a special counsel. Ken, is that the way it's supposed to work?
No, oh my goodness, no. Completely irregular, inappropriate, and unprofessional. You just don't do that. And if you have a real issue, what you do is you resign. You go to the White House counsel, or in this case, you should have gone to the Attorney General, whoever that person was, Jeff Sessions and so forth, and say, you know, I've got a real problem here. It's an ethical problem and so forth, and I'm going to have to take pretty decisive action and so forth. So you go through a process in Washington, D.C. Some call it bureaucracy. I call it, at this level, a process of accountability. You go to the Attorney General, or if for whatever reason you think, you know, I've got to bypass the Attorney General, then you've got to go to someone, and the person to go to then would be the counsel to the President of the United States, at the time, Don McGahn.
It is Ken Starr, S-T-A-R-R. The name of the book is Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Ken, I'm wondering, if the president did in fact say to the or not even the acting, to the FBI director over dinner, hey, can you see yourself fit to drop this whole Flynn thing? He's a good guy. Is that obstruction of justice? Is he allowed to say that to the FBI director? And the guy works for him, right?
Right. I do not believe that it constitutes obstruction of justice in any legal sense. I think it suggests, frankly, an unwise act by the president. But notice, he didn't say, I hereby direct you to do it. I'm sending you a letter ordering you to do it. It was, hey, can you, in fact, see your way fit? Now, if you can't, and there are then no consequences that flow, right? No punishment, there's no sanction or whatever, then in essence, it's a gesture of kindness and generosity on the part of the president. If he'd had a lawyer to his side, his lawyer would say, Mr. President, be cautious. You know, this is a very sensitive area. There's no reason for you to go there, understand your sentiment, etc. And he'd also probably say, you know, let me see if I can find a way to handle this, not in any nefarious sense, but just to have a communication to the effect, you know, General Flynn has served his country beautifully and so forth. Let me make one substantive point. When you read the Mueller, and I know we're going to go there, when we read the Mueller report carefully, you see the false statements, and no one denies, the general doesn't deny they made false statements. They don't relate to the campaign at all.
Right.
They don't relate to collusion during the campaign. They all relate to the transition after the President of the United States has been elected. So there's this oddity of, well, why did General Flynn choose to not tell the truth to the special counsel about transition, not about the campaign? So it's a very, and I think it's an unanswered question.
And just to finish on the Comey situation, had the president looked at him and said, I'm going to fire you if you don't drop this case right now, I believe, and I think Alan Dershowitz agrees with this, I believe, and Dershowitz and I don't agree on much, that the president still has the right to say it as his boss. But if he actually takes action, perhaps you look at it as obstruction or somehow abuse of power. But as the boss of the Department of Justice, as the boss of the executive, I think he could have said that, and still it would have been okay, as long as he doesn't actually do it.
Yes, and under the statute, so we're talking about, and I'm so glad you mentioned the issue of abuse of power.
Yeah.
What we may be talking about at the end of the day is an allegation of abuse of power,
Right.
and not a violation of the criminal statute. Because to get legal just for a second here, the Supreme Court of the United States unanimously held that the obstruction of justice statute requires corrupt intent.
Right.
Well, what is corrupt intent? Well, for example, being paid a bribe or something. Go take care of my friend, General Flynn, right, and I'll build you a Trump Tower in Moscow. I mean,
Right.
something that's a quid pro quo. But we don't have that here.
Right. And that's exactly what the left keeps on trying to hang its hat on. It's Ken Starr. His book is Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Former independent counsel into Bill Clinton. You actually found that there were issues, and they impeached him on what your findings were. Your findings were abuse of power, right? Your findings were that I guess he lied under oath with what the definition of is about Monica Lewinsky or Paula Jones or something, but also the abuse of power piece. What specifically was it that he did that told you this is a leap far enough for me to say he's guilty?
The so-called Starr report built up after establishing perjury, and I think we proved perjury beyond a reasonable doubt, obstruction of justice beyond a reasonable doubt. But it then moved all the way up to what we call count 11, which was the abuse of power count. And that had to do with the improper invocation of executive privilege, the improper creation of non-existent privileges, and other abuses of power. Now, the House of Representatives, the Judiciary Committee, did not agree, or at least they didn't include that in the articles of impeachment. So that never went over to the Senate.
Okay. It is Ken Starr. Ken, back to Comey, and I want to add in Rosenstein, I want to add in McCabe, I want to add in all these guys that were applying for FISA warrants with the FISA court. They went knowing that the dossier was fake, knowing that it was paid for by a political campaign, knowing that the backup they were using to verify that the dossier was something newsworthy and important was the fact that the writer of it, this guy Steele, actually gave it to Yahoo News, and then they were using Yahoo News, a report that was planted by Steele himself, to go back to the FISA court and get these warrants renewed. Comey knows that he signed for at least one of these FISA warrants, if not more than that. Why is he in the middle of this? I mean, if you were advising him as legal counsel to Jim Comey, is it time for him just to shut up? Because he's going to be in big trouble, is he not?
Well, you have raised a lot of issues, and they're fair game.
Thanks.
But we don't have the answers yet, right?
Yeah.
You've made a number of statements, and I don't disagree with any of the statements, but my point is very simple. We've got to get to the bottom of all this. Well, how are we going to do this? Well, we have several mechanisms. One, we have Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, who's going to come forward with a report that we think will answer all these questions. Secondly, we've got Bill Barr, the Attorney General, who said in his confirmation hearings, as you know, that he has concerns, that he has questions about exactly the kinds of things you were talking about.
Yeah.
And thirdly, ditto for Lindsey Graham, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, who said he has concerns, he has questions. So let's get all that. So yes, my advice, were I asked, would be the less you say at this stage, the better, because you may be in harm's way.
Former independent counsel Ken Starr, his book is Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Go get it. Get 5 copies. Send them out to your friends and family. You read the Mueller report. Obviously, there's no collusion. For 2 straight years, the left has been yelling from the highest mountain, oh, there's collusion. I'll bet my bottom dollar. People have been promising to move out of the country if no collusion was found, and no collusion was found. The obstruction piece, I wonder what your thoughts are, because the way I understand it is the special counsel Mueller finds that there is... Here are the pieces that would point to or not point to obstruction. It's now up to the Attorney General Bill Barr to decide whether he thinks it is. Is that appropriate? Is that normal? Is that standard operating procedure? Because the left is pretending Bill sees or Barr sees Mueller said, yes, obstruction, do something about it. And Barr says, I see no obstruction, put blinders on. What's the truth about what you do with that? As the special counsel says, here's the information, you decide.
No, I think you go to the report itself and let the report speak for itself, and you just rightly echoed the report as opposed to spin on the report. The report lays out these so-called obstructive acts, but it nonetheless says we're not going to reach a judgment as to whether a prosecution should be brought. And so the special counsel put this issue square in the hands of Bill Barr, who then described a process he went through, which is to consult with Rod Rosenstein as well as the Office of Legal Counsel, and to come to the view that this was not chargeable as a criminal offense. There's some things in there that are unflattering to the President of the United States if you credit them. Now, are they true? Well, we've got a report that's a one-sided report. That is, it's the prosecutor's report. We don't have the response, and that's one of the things, Joe, as you know, Alan Dershowitz is very strong on.
Yeah.
You hear one side, but in a court of law, you hear another. But what is very clear from the report, from the literal language of the report, is that this report was designed not only to go to the public domain, but essentially was a call on the House of Representatives to consider, did the President of the United States corruptly abuse his power? That's not an exact quote, but it's pretty close.
Right.
And I view that, Joe, as very questionable. That's not the job of the special counsel. It was, now to go back to the old days, the job of the independent counsel. That's what I was specifically called on to do, to make a determination whether this should go to the House of Representatives for possible impeachment.
Thoughts, Ken, at all about 81 witnesses that the left now wants to see in front of some House committee? 81 witnesses after they said for 2 years we'll accept anything Mueller comes up with. Obviously, they thought Mueller would agree with their suppositions and their conspiracy theories. 81 people now that they're going to subpoena, and they want to bring Donald Trump Jr. back in front of them after 30 hours in front of Mueller. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think the case has been tried very elaborately when you look at the Mueller report and Bill Barr's, the Attorney General's summary of the report, the 19 lawyers who had the 2 years to look into this matter and this matter alone, obviously the Paul Manafort thing. This was truly exhaustive. Moreover, they had the advantage of being outside a political environment and in front of a grand jury. And I hope you never have to go before a grand jury. I've not gone before as a witness, but I've been there as a lawyer, and I will tell you, it is a very formidable proceeding, not scary, but it's formidable because you've got 23 citizens, just like you and me, and they're there and they get to ask questions. They're not potted plants, and that's the proceeding. But what the grand jurors know is that witness is under oath. He or she is supposed to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Now, when we get up to one, very quickly, when you read book one, which is the book about collusion, the conclusion that comes out of every part of that 174 pages before he gets to the part that says, here's what we prosecuted and here's why we declined, says no collusion. Time and time again, no collusion, no conspiracy. It's not just a bottom line. It is throughout the document, throughout all these episodes, that's the conclusion that emerges.
It is Kenneth Starr, former independent counsel, former judge. Is just a great legal mind. The book is Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. Ken, I've only got about 30 seconds. I appreciate you giving me your time today. But just if you can, give me just a quick observation as to how you were treated by the legacy media and how they kissed up to Mueller for 2 years, and now they're sort of turning on him too. Just as you watch that unfold, I mean, did it make you go, how come I didn't get this sort of independence? How come they didn't leave me alone?
It goes with the territory. You know, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. But yeah, I wish that, but it's only a wish, that that the media would just be, shall I say, less opinionated and just more, what are the facts here, right? Just like the old Jack Webb. What are the facts here? Nothing but the facts and so forth. But instead, we live in the age of spin, and so that's where you have it. But thank goodness for the First Amendment.
No, I agree with you, and thank goodness I get to rebut what they say, and that you and I can actually talk about it, first person, and not have 3 and 4 different people back in the line deciding what you did, what they did, and what Mueller did. Ken, I appreciate you. I could talk to you all day. Can we do it again soon? I would love that, Joe. It is Ken Starr, Starr is his last name. Get his book, Contempt, a memoir of the Clinton investigation. It's an incredible read. Ken, thanks a million. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to newsmaxtv.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.